Every story leaves a shadow, and every shadow needs a place to grow. If you found yourself returning to these dark corners night after night, and you'd like to keep the lantern burning, we've just opened a Patreon. If you'd like to join us, you'll find a link waiting for you in the description below. As a Patreon supporter, you'll also receive every new episode 24 hours before it's released publicly, giving you an early glimpse into the darkness. Every contribution goes straight back into the show, improving audio quality, working with talented voice actors, supporting the team behind the scenes, and ensuring the incredible authors who share their nightmares are fairly rewarded. Of course, there's never any obligation. Simply listening means more than you know. But if you'd like to help these tales become even darker, even richer, and even more immersive, I'd be honoured to welcome you. Now, dim the lights, lock the door, and let's return to the darkness. Have you ever felt profound loss? Not your run-of-the-mill pet passing away, or going to your grandpa's funeral when you were 12. A grief so heavy that you can't breathe. When we lost our second child 5 months into the pregnancy, it fundamentally changed us. We stepped into that delivery room to give birth to a child that was already gone. Much like a comet, even as he arrived, he was already leaving. Even writing this microcosm of our time together, my eyes fill, and my heart is heavy. Holding his lifeless body was truly the worst experience of my life up until that point. My wife was the most beautiful person I've ever met. She was vibrant, joyful, and shared my sense of humour. She had auburn hair and blue eyes, with a laugh that truly filled a room. She wasn't necessarily the most popular person, but she was someone people felt comfortable confiding in. We were high school sweethearts, and essentially grew up together, facing life's challenges side by side. I got some pushback when I decided to join the military, but nothing could hold us down for long. After I returned to civilian life, we bought a larger house, started a family, and really settled down. I was over the moon when she showed me her second positive pregnancy test. I couldn't believe how lucky I was. Our grief was a physical presence between us. I've heard it said that it can make or break a relationship, and I suppose we fell into the latter category. Our firstborn child, Daisy, became my focus. I'd spend hours just playing dolls with her on the carpet, her radiant smile dulling the ache in my chest. My wife, however, turned to other means of comfort. It started benignly enough with a bottle of wine at dinner. However, it turned into 2 bottles, then to mixed drinks, and ultimately, a straight bottle of Jack. She would drink from the moment she woke up until she passed out on the couch. I tried sheltering Daisy the best that I could, but when every evening Mummy was throwing up in the bathroom, a 5-year-old tends to ask questions. I tried to talk to her, but my comfort, pleas and demands were unheeded. Things took a turn when I began finding prescription pills laying around. What was looking to be hardcore alcoholism was turning into a full-blown addiction. I started dumping out bottles when I found them, but it never seemed to matter. She would simply leave and come back hammered and high on whatever pills she had managed to get a hold of. She started going out more and more, coming home past midnight. Sometimes she wouldn't even come home at all, showing up days later looking like she hadn't slept. The downward spiral was so fast that I didn't even know what to do. I'm not saying that I didn't try, but there is only so much that one man can do while also caring for a child. One day, there was a noticeable change when she stumbled back home. She didn't reek of alcohol and vomit like usual. She just seemed less. I couldn't put my finger on it then, but I shudder to think about it now. She stopped going out drinking every night. She wouldn't talk to me about it, but maybe a switch flipped, and she decided enough was enough. We started to get along again, and she even got back into cooking. I began to notice odd behaviour though. She would forget simple things at first. I would be talking about a popular movie and she wouldn't even be able to recall the name. Daisy was running in the house one day and my wife seemed to be about to chide her, but then she paused. She asked what her daughter's name was. I know that she might be suffering from a week-long bender, but that's not something that you just don't know. A few times I walked into the house to the smell of something burning, only to find a pot full of pasta, all the water evaporated, the spaghetti blackened and stuck to the bottom. I began to suspect that she wasn't done with her addiction, she had just found something she could hide. I worked a night shift, so I wasn't with her 24/7. Maybe she was going out while I was away to get whatever fix she was using. I decided that the best thing to do was hire a PA to watch her while I was away. I was worried she was leaving our child at home alone while she got high with God knows who. Was she being unfaithful? It hurts my heart to think of her like that now, but when faced with so many unknowns, nothing is off the table. I searched online and found a small agency. They connected me with Private Investigator Miller. We set up a meeting at a local Denny's to discuss the details. Miller was the vision of capability. Simply being in his proximity provided me with a sense of, if not relief, reassurance. His thinning grey hair and boxer's nose showed like a badge of honour for someone who had been in there and lived to tell the tale. After an extended conversation about everything that was going on, my voice was left shaky. I hadn't really spoken with anyone about the recent going on, and the thought of losing my wife to drugs and potentially infidelity weighed on my shoulders like a wet blanket. Miller assured me that come what may, I would have my answers by this time tomorrow. I went to work like usual, leaving Daisy with my wife. Before you judge me, I was a sole provider for the house. And as nice of a notion it would have been to take time off to help sort out my wife's spiral, I couldn't afford to. All night, I dreaded what horrible details Private Investigator Miller would uncover. My phone sat inert in my pocket like a ticking time bomb ready to blow my life apart. But the promised update never came. At the end of my shift, I texted, called, and left a voicemail. No response. The next day, I called the agency back, and they claimed that they haven't heard from Miller all day. My stomach hit the floor. I knew it was related. I gave it a full week, still nothing back from Miller or the agency. It was becoming increasingly apparent that if I wanted answers, I would have to get them myself. Day after day, my wife began to deteriorate. Her once beautiful long hair began to thin. Her waistline shrank until I could count her ribs. It had to be tonight. I called off work and sent Daisy to stay the night with her grandparents. I told them that I had to have a sit down with my wife and give her a chance to turn things around. I left the house like I was going to work and parked at the end of the street. At around 11:30 p.m, I saw my wife shuffle out of the front door and into her car. I could hear the engine roar to life from my vantage point and watched as she began pulling out of the driveway. I started my own car and began following from a safe distance. Our area is fairly rural, so you wouldn't need to drive far to end up in the middle of nowhere. I saw her brake lights flash as she began turning into a dirt road. I switched off my headlights and followed slowly. The dark, bumpy road led onto a forest path. The moon provided a faint illumination to everything. A fine cloud of dust filled my windscreen, and as I followed her down the dark road, being jostled side to side on the uneven compact road, the idea that something was terribly wrong grew in my gut. Suddenly, her brake lights engaged again, and after coming to a stop, she got out of the car without even switching it off. I immediately stopped my own forward movement so as not to alert her of my presence. I cringed as I saw the brake light in my rear view mirror, but if she noticed, she didn't show a sign. I opened my glove box and pulled out my Glock 19. I wasn't sure of what I was walking into, but the soldier in me didn't want to face it empty-handed. If I couldn't handle whatever it was with 15 rounds of 9mm, then I was in way over my head, and I quietly got out and began to follow her. The path was intermittently laden with overgrown foliage, making it difficult to navigate, but my wife seemed to just walk right through it. She had to be getting snagged by the thorns. I resisted the urge to call out and continued to follow in the distance. I saw a flickering light accompanied by the smell of wet burning wood. As we approached, the fire grew in scope. It looked to be about 6 foot tall, recklessly built and well fed. As I walked the path, in all but abandoned stealth, as my wife seemed to be in a trance-like state, I felt my foot sink into what I thought was a rotten log. As my foot pushed through the resistance, I could feel the visceral sensation of crashing through a multitude of dry layers. A glance down revealed it not to be a log. I recognized the thinning hair and the dried silhouette of his flattened out nose. My foot had gone straight into his bared chest as if it were an abandoned wasp's nest. His skin was papery and devoid of moisture. His eyes in his skull weren't gone. They were like deflated balloons in the sockets. I stifled my scream as I shook his remains clinging to my shoes and pants, pushing it to the side. I continued my pursuit, pulling out my pistol in preparation for whatever could do that to Miller. There was a pervasive scent of campfire in the air as my wife approached a clearing. The light was disrupted by the dense trees around the trail. My mind was racing as I scanned the field for life, but as my wife walked on, they seemed to be rising from nothing. They weren't quite human. Although they seemed to be a crude facsimile, their faces simply weren't there. They appeared to be shambling skeletons draped with loose skin. In the firelight, they were pale, tinged with the yellow light of the fire. I thought to myself that if they were to be touched by an ember, they would burn like paper. My wife just walked straight up to one and extended her arm to the creature. The movement was so natural. Like a baby bird preparing to be fed when a mother bird returns to the nest. The thing produced a claw-like finger and ran it down my wife's exposed wrist. Black blood ran up her arms in straight rivulets. I gasped and was about to sprint forward when I stopped myself. I had to know exactly what she was on so that when I brought her back, I could try to get her help. The thing repeated the same on its own wrist, only to reveal a milky white, sap-like substance. It pressed its wrist to hers, and she began to convulse where she stood. Having stood by enough, I decided that now was the time to act. I press-checked my pistol to ensure that I had a round in the chamber and stepped into the clearing. Everything stopped. The dozen or so creatures ceased their movement and all turned to me. The thing that was next to my wife withdrew its arm from hers and just turned to me. Looking at my wife, she seemed even less than she had earlier. A shock of fear ran through me when I tried to meet her eyes and saw wrinkles. Her eyes seemed to have begun to deflate, and she blindly gazed right past me. I raised my pistol, and without further thought, I began to fire into the creature next to my wife. My ears instantly began to ring, and all other sounds were dulled as I put round after round of 9mm into various parts of the thing's body. I hadn't noticed pulling the trigger 15 times, but at some point the slide was locked to the rear and the trigger was letting off an impotent click as I continued to pull it. Not to say that I hadn't done any damage, but it was as if I had shot a paper target. I could see various holes in the creature's skin from the impacts, but it hadn't so much as staggered as I shot. As I stood there with my pistol still extended, the creature began to slowly approach me, claw extended as if to perform the same ritual with me. I let out a primal scream as I ran around to get my wife. She ran into the crowd of creatures, never glancing back at me, as if I wasn't even there. I had lost my wife a long time ago, but in that moment, I had just realised it. As the creatures began to close in on me in no hurry, I thought of Daisy being left there alone. I ran and didn't look back. Thinking about it now, I still feel the same shame and my cowardice. I am conflicted in that I don't know what I could have done. I just feel impotent of that moment like a hot brand on my skin. Of course, I called the cops when I got back to my car. If I couldn't do anything, there had to be someone who could help me. Help her. All the police found when they arrived at the scene was my wife's still running car and 15 spent shell casings in the empty clearing. They didn't find the private investigator's remains, but they did find his possessions strewn about. Despite my pleading for help, they took me in as the prime suspect for the disappearance of my wife, as well as P.I. Miller. It wasn't a long case. The facts were blurry enough to pin the blame completely on myself, chalking it up to me not revealing the truth. They never found the remains, and I am questioned about their location to this day. I wonder, as I sit here in my cell, if there was something I could have done differently. Perhaps. My wife was in desperate need to forget, driven by pain to abandon the life that we had built. I question what the things in the clearing really were. I have a lot of time to reflect now, locked in a cell for the foreseeable future. There's a thought that keeps returning to me in the dead of night, lying in my bunk with the various background noises of hundreds of men in confinement. A name that bounces around my skull until it's about to burst. I sometimes crave the ability to forget their blank faces and sagging skin, that milky substance they fed into my wife until she was nothing. And in an odd way, it makes me feel closer to her. The name that haunts my days and nights until I feel a silent scream rise into my throat. Lotus Eaters.